The development of societies in arid and semi-arid areas in the last 5,000 years is closely connected with water management problems that have shaped the relevant society and its structures. In the course of the centuries, systems and methods worked out under these conditions have demonstrated their sustainability. Today, the water wisdom of the past can help us solve current problems. Hundreds of years ago, the people living at Abbas, near the Great Namak Desert, Iran, constructed an ambitious water transfer project for management of limited but vital resources of the region. Due to primitive technologies of the 13th century, the visionary people had to rely on their intuition, imagination, creativeness, hard work, devotion, and courage to accomplish these astounding achievements in water engineering. The mentioned water storage and transfer systems provide and regulate water for two important population centers of the region, Tabas and Kurit. One of the systems consisted of Kurit Dam, a qanat and a channel with a total length of 20 kilometers. The other system has been transferring water from the Nahrain River to Tabas by qanats and artificial channels. The achievements of the region in flood management are equally important. The Abbasi flood retarding dam, constructed 600 years ago, is an illustrating example of water wisdom of the builders. The dam has been protecting the city of Tabas from floods for the past 600 years. There are much uncertainties and ambiguities about the different aspects of Abbasi Dam. Consequently, a team of engineers planned to visit the dam to investigate. On their way to the dam site, the engineers observed a few shelters dug into the mountains. Apparently, the locals used to shelter in these places for their own safety in hard times. Erection of many ancient dams in remote mountainous areas where access is still difficult indicates how carefully all possible sites were investigated. As the team approaches the dam, the engineers reach the springs that provide most of the base flow of the river. The springs are just a few kilometers away from the vast barren deserts of central Iran. Obviously, steady flow of these springs is a great of value. The dam site is located 100 meters upstream of water springs that account for a considerable part of base flow of the river. Consequently, it is unlikely that the main function of the dam is water storage. Otherwise, they should have constructed the dam downstream of the springs. The team arrives at the dam site and the engineers start surveying the dam. Much can be learned from the water wisdom of the past. Many considerations of modern site selection practice, such as topography, availability of construction materials, diversion works during construction, stream flow regime, and so on, seem to have taken into account for selecting the most appropriate site of historical dams in Iran. Most of Iranian historical dams were constructed on rock foundation, and consequently the structures have remained stable over centuries. The Abbasi Dam has this advantage, and so it has survived major earthquakes and floods during hundreds of years of operation. The steep rocky terrain and very large boulders carried by the flood waters are indicative of considerable flood potentials of the river.
This is the Abbasi Dam, or as the locals call it, the Abbasi Arch. The dam is 400 to 600 years old based on different resources. The construction of three high arch dam in the 14th century in Iran was the first application of this type of dam since the introduction of arch dam by Romans and Iranians.
To avert constructions of diversion tunnel, Iranians used to construct the dams on a brick arch in narrow canyons. The lower part of the dam would be constructed during a dry season. This creative scheme has been used in many historical dams in Iran. At Abbasi Dam site, the lower part was not constructed, so during floods, the outflow from the dam was automatically regulated. A historical document indicates that the main functions of the dam is controlling the floods. Based on this document, they did not construct the lower part in view of probable failure of the structure and a risk to the downstream.
The Abbasi Dam is probably the most unknown large dam in Iran. There is considerable misunderstanding and uncertainty about different features of the dam.
As a flood occurs, reservoir fills and discharge increases until the flood has passed and the inflow has become equal to the outflow. Afterwards, water is automatically withdrawn from the reservoir until the stored water is completely discharged. In this manner, the reservoir volume will be used at the most critical time to reduce the flood peak drastically.
It should be mentioned that the Abbasi Dam has survived the Tabas earthquake in 1978. The magnitude of the earthquake was 7.3 and the maximum acceleration was 0.75 G, which is very considerable. Some 25,000 people were killed during the earthquake, and nearly all the historical monuments were devastated. Still, the Abbasi Dam and the Korit Dam survived the earthquake nearly undamaged.
A survey of reservoir clearly indicates that there is virtually no sedimentation in the reservoir after 600 years of operation. As the Abbasi Dam has been stable in many extreme events, it is virtually a sustainable dam. Very few dams in the world enjoy such an advantage. It can be concluded that creative consistency with the flood waters can be achieved, and sustainability may be a result of such consistency. Other advantages of a Abbasi retarding dam are: the reservoir would be empty at the beginning of the flood, and controlling the flood peak would be substantial. The risk to the downstream is minimized because the reservoir is empty most of the time. The present scheme has allowed the passage of the villagers through the gorge. The flood retarding scheme of Abbasi Dam has been used for solving flood control and environmental conflicts in Muko River in Japan. In 1983, the river authorities planned to construct flood control dam in the valley at the middle of the stream to protect important urban areas. However, since the area is famous for the beauty of the valley and is known as a scenic area, people fond of the scenic beauty have been against the construction for the past 20 years. Finally, the river authorities changed the design and proposed a type of dam with orifices like a retarding basin without control gates at the outlets. The proposed dam is very similar to Abbasi Dam and enjoys all the advantages mentioned. While controlling the rate, the stored water in the dam is quickly discharged, thus resulting in insignificant damage to the downstream plants, and consequently the main function of the dam is achieved without adverse effect to the environment. This example clearly indicates that water wisdom of the past can greatly help us cope with water-related challenges of the 21st century. Finally, it should be mentioned that this heritage is not the sole property of this generation. All generations to come have the right to learn from the water wisdom of the past, and undoubtedly that Abbasi Dam would be an inspiration to everyone.